and welcome to the Global Ethics Day. My name is Ama Edusam and I'll be your presenter for today. So I am a registered practitioner for procurement. I am also, as of last night, I was told I'm the acting chair, I should say. I'm the acting chair of the Ethics Committee for ASCI. And I've got a side hustle as the Director of Procurement for Operations in ResMed. So welcome again to the celebration of Global Ethics Day. The theme for this year is Ethics Empowered. For those of you who don't know anything about Global Ethics Day, I'll give you a little bit of a history. So it was started back in 2014 by the Carnegie Council. And the aim of the day was really to bring awareness to corporations and individuals about ethics and all ethics related matters. And over the last 8 years, there's been over 75 participants, there's been participants from over 75 countries who've been involved in the Global Ethics Day. This year marks the first time that ASCI is participating in the Global Ethics Day. So welcome once again, and let's get started. I thought I will start off by setting the scene for you all. I believe that you would all agree with me when I say that supply chain ethics is a global issue. It is an issue that is also very, very complex and very broad because it covers a wide range of activities within the supply chain. It covers everything from procurement through to logistics, bribery and corruption, modern slavery, sustainability, which is quite a hot topic at the moment, climate change, and right down to protections for individuals and companies. Corporates and individuals are considered to be more aware of their role within the supply chain versus government. So if we think about Australia, the name that comes to mind for me as a person who's doing a lot from a supply chain ethics perspective will be Twiggy Forrest. So he is single-handedly doing a lot about bringing awareness to modern slavery in supply chains and also climate change. Interestingly, climate change has become quite topical and our politicians are talking about it. You would have all heard in the news, already in the news this week on discussions around whether we sign up to zero emissions by 2050. So supply chain ethical issues are quite topical. Governments, on the other hand, tend to be rather slow to act. In Australia, we do have the modern slavery legislation, just as the UK does. In Europe, however, they tend to be a bit ahead of the curve. So they have passed or are planning to pass legislation specifically for supply chain ethics regulation. So how does ASCI come into play in all of this? ASCI is hoping to take a leadership role with supply chain ethics and is currently working on developing practical and wide-ranging training, advice, and information to assist corporates to manage this very vital part of their business. Having set the scene, I'll go through and talk about our agenda for today. Firstly, we will learn a little bit more about ASCI. Then we'll talk through the ASCI management program. We'll talk about current projects that are happening. And lastly, we'll have a panel discussion with the esteemed members of the ASCI Ethics Committee. As I go through the presentation, please feel free to ask any questions you have or put it in the chat so we can have a discussion about it. If I don't know the answer to the question that you ask, rest assured, I will call a friend who will be able to assist you. Okay, so ASCI. What is ASCI? I'm hoping all of you know, but for those of you who don't know, ASCI actually stands for the Australasian Supply Chain Institute. So what is the vision, mission, and strategic priorities of this body? Let's talk through its vision. The sole vision of ASCI is to advance supply chain towards a recognized profession within Australasia. If we think about that, everyone knows of CPA or CAA. So the accounting body has gone ahead in terms of getting recognized within the region. And that is what ASCI wants to do for the supply chain profession. from a mission perspective, it covers 4 key areas. The first of which is implementing a professional accreditation scheme. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. We're also aiming to partner with leading service providers of research and professional development programs, because as we all know, learning is a lifelong thing. And as professionals, we need to keep abreast and up to date with changes that are happening within our industry. ASCI also wants to be a leading industry advocate and collaborate with both individuals and businesses. And lastly, but certainly not the least, we want to inspire and grow our supply chain member community, because without supply chain, no economy works. So it's important that we inspire a new number of people to come into this profession. When it comes to strategic priorities, it's broken down into 4 key areas. I mentioned before about the professional accreditation scheme, which I'll talk to a bit later. We've got the continued professional development because learning is important. We've got ethics management and industry advocacy. As today is Global Ethics Day, we will be focusing on the ethics management part. So let's talk about ASCI as a professional accreditation body. There is a scheme that exists to provide individuals with professional acknowledgement and recognition of their competence within their relative supply chain streams. And so under this registration scheme, you actually get assessed and then you get given a competency if you pass it. So when I was introducing myself, I mentioned that I was a registered practitioner for procurement. That's because I have gone through the assessment and I have been deemed competent for for procurement. And so there are other related supply chain streams that people can get their competency from. Procurement is one of them. There's logistics, there's operations. But the aim of the scheme is really to say that, yes, you are competent in your area of expertise. The ASCI Ethics Management Program. What's its purpose and what is it authorized to do? Firstly, ASCI actually has a board of directors that oversee everything that is done. And the ASCI Ethics Committee sits underneath the board of directors and reports into the board of directors. The ASCI Management Program is offered to all ASCI members, and it is complete and a unique approach to ethics programs. The whole point of the Ethics Management Program is to have a formalized structure in place that ensure that ASCI and its members are perceived as fair, honest, and responsible. And it really aligns with ASCI's corporate values and provides guidance in the event of ethical dilemmas. That is overseen by the Ethics Management Committee. So that's what the Ethics Management Program is about. In terms of the Ethics Management Program, there's actually 3 key components that makes up that program. The first one covers ethics policies. And there are 4 things that sits underneath that: the code of ethics, the standards of conduct, the professional principles, and lastly, a statement of professional conduct. Then there's a policy that covers privacy. And lastly, there's a whistleblowers policy, because, you know, which good body wouldn't have a whistleblowers policy? Talking to the ethics code of conduct. The Ethics Code of Conduct sets out what clients, employers, and sponsors can expect from an ASCI member when they employ them, engage them within the supply chain industry. So every member is subject to the principles and aims of the ASCI Code of Conduct. And there is a process for when a breach occurs, where a member can be reported and investigated. All of this is contained in the ASCI complaint and disciplinary system, which can be found on the ASCI website. So all registered members, when they engage in a role, there is an expectation that they live up to the standards of the Code of Ethics. Under the Code of Ethics, you've got standards of conduct. And there are a few things that we talk about when it comes to standards of conduct. Firstly, there is the professional conduct statement. So this is a statement that as a member, you're required to sign to say you will act according to the expectations of the profession. There is a section that covers conflicts of interest. Again, that is all around doing the right thing. Where you have a conflict, you should declare it. Then there's the protection of confidential or sensitive information. Under that, again, the expectation is that you do protect confidential and sensitive information. There is business relations. Under business relations, the expectation is that we promote fair competition in the market and also protect the interest and reputation of your employer, and not to use your position to garner any personal favors or advantages, which then brings us to gifts, gratuities, and hospitality inducements. So members must ensure their objectivity in their decision-making and ensure that they're not compromised in any way. And members should be discerning in their business and social activities to enhance the integrity of the profession. Last, but certainly not the least, we have environmental and social responsibilities. Under that, we're expecting that members will exercise their responsibilities in a manner that promotes and provides opportunities for the protection and preservation of the environment, and favor the use of distribution of resources in an efficient, effective, and ethical manner. Members should also be cognizant of the social rights extended to all people, including any legislation or international conventions with respect to labor standards, and also to support and encourage supplier diversity. And to do so within the context of the organizations that they represent. Professional principles. Professional competency. So the idea here is that everyone maintains or stays informed and complies with the best practices as it comes to supply chain. As we know, things are always changing, so we expect members to keep abreast with all changes that are happening within the industry. Members are expected to be professional. It goes without saying in the way they act. Honesty and integrity. Again, the expectation is that all members are honest and show integrity in everything that they do. Responsible management. To optimize without prejudice the use of resources for which they are responsible for and use it to the maximum value for their organization. Serving the public good. Under that, you're to use your position to advance the interests and well-being of society, to denounce all forms of business practices that may compromise value and bring discredit to your organization or society. And lastly, compliance with legal obligations. In this, we expect all members to be aware and to comply with all laws and regulations and standards that are relevant to the supply chain industry, not limited to the Corporations Act and also the Consumer and Competition Act of 2010. We've got the Statement of Professional Conduct. This really talks to how members are to behave. And when you sign up to be a member, you're expected to sign up and say you will act according to the expectations under the profession. You're meant to disclose if there are any investigations, litigations, complaints, or disciplinary proceedings happening in relation to yourself. Members also have to submit a professional conduct, statement of conduct when they first join, and annually as part of their membership renewal. And if a member doesn't do that, we do have the right to suspend their registration. Privacy. So that is the second block. From a privacy perspective, the key thing to note is that ASCI stores your information in a manner that protects your information. And ASCI does not disclose your information to third parties. There is also a complaints process for you to let ASCI know if the way that your data is being stored is not done in a way that protects you. And that can get escalated to the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. So this point is really to say that your information is well and truly protected. Last but certainly not least, we've got a whistleblower policy. The idea behind the whistleblower policy is that it protects the members within ASCI. And there is a mechanism for lodging a complaint. There is a process that is followed. There are 4 levels of sanctions. There's an appeals process, and everything is confidential. And so if you see a member doing the wrong thing, you'll have an avenue to report that and do that in a safe and confidential manner. To the current projects that we've got. There is currently a proposal for an alliance for ethical and sustainable supply chains. And the aim of this is to engage with corporates to help them achieve and also to recognize those that are doing the right thing when it comes to supply chain ethical issues. There is also going to be a training program. We've identified a partner that can deliver 7 modules, and it covers 27 subjects, which are linked to the UN Sustainability Development Goals. This training program will also form a vital part of the Alliance. Lastly, we've got an online library with a significant amount of information that is relevant to ethics, which the Ethics Committee has collated. In summary, we want you to take away 3 key things. The first one being the fact that ASCI exists to work to create a recognized professional body for supply chain. The professional accreditation scheme is live and operational. As I mentioned before, I've gone through it and you can too. It's a very well thought through program, and it really does test your competence. So when you get it, you know that it is well regarded. The ethics management program. So this is being constructed and it will form part and parcel of the continued professional development and training. Supply chain ethics resources. On the ASCI website, we have a comprehensive library on things that relate to supply chain ethics. So please make sure you go to the website and check it out. Lastly, what are we asking of you today? We are asking that you apply to become a member, and not only that, go through the accreditation scheme and become a practitioner. Information relating to that can be found on the ASCI website. Secondly, we are also asking those that are interested in joining the ASCI Ethics Committee to send through the expressions of interest to ethics@asci.org.au. That is the end of the first part of this session. The next part will be the panel discussion. And so if there are no questions, we will get through to the panel discussion. There are 4 people on the panel, and I will ask them to introduce themselves. I'll just stop sharing and then we can get into the panel discussion. So the people on the panel today are myself, I'll be the host. Then we've got Wayne Larsen, we've got Rebecca Pressgrave, and Peter Nagal. So how about I ask each of you to introduce yourself, and then we can get right into the Q&A.
Sure. My name is Wayne Larsen. I am the Secretary of the Ethics Committee. I've been a member of the Ethics Committee since it was established some 2 or 3 years ago. And I have a long professional background in supply chain management and distribution in both local Australian businesses and international supply chains. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you, Wayne. I will go to Rebecca next, even though her thing says Peter. It's actually Rebecca. Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Amma. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for introducing me. So my name's Rebecca Pressgrave. I am a RegPracLog along with Amma. I've been, till recently, an avid member of the Ethics Committee, and now am the President of the College of Procurement as part of the ASCI organisation. Thank you, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Rebecca. Peter?
You're on mute, Peter.
Thanks, Wayne. My name is Peter Nagal. I've been involved with the scheme since its inception, working with a lot of people like the ones around the table, Amma and Rebecca and Wayne, and a lot of other volunteers to get the scheme where it is. And I have to say, I'm very excited, Amma, the way that this whole ethics program is presented. You will see that this is an extensive program. I mean, you see just a few slides. You can go to the website. It's like an extensive program, and it is unique to the supply chain industry. And it's not only the ethics program; it's the registration itself and all the other things. So yeah, I'm overseeing that as one of the things I'm doing. Otherwise, I've been in the supply chain world my whole working career, and passionate about getting this thing legislated.
So I think Amma might have dropped up there. So maybe I'll take the lead on a question and throw it over to Peter or Wayne. Amma, are you there?
She might be logging back in again.
Yeah. Can I throw to Wayne or Peter? What does ethics mean to you?
I guess from a supply chain perspective, it is I guess as is the I guess the Constitution and the articles of the committee. It's about looking down the supply chain at all of the issues around exploitation, be it people, economic, and environmental exploitation in the supply chain, and putting in place measures and accountabilities and decision-making processes and due diligence to avoid tripping over those issues in your supply chain, and comes back to both the personal decision-making and corporate structures and policies and mechanisms to make sure that supply chains are not I guess intrinsically engaged in the exploitation of those that can be exploited, be it both people or economics.
Fabulous answer. Anything to add, Peter?
Yeah, I think the point where I'm coming from is, as we've made mentioned before, and Amma has mentioned as well, in ASCI's pursuit to professionalize supply chain management, we actually need to be specific. Eventually, we would seek legislation for supply chain management. In the same way that lawyers and doctors and accountants and stuff are legislated. Now, we're not ready for that legislation yet. And that's not because of the scheme. There's a whole lot of things in line to get that legislation. But one of the key components of any profession whether they legislated or non-legislated, and there are a number of these that are non-legislated in this. A key thing is the ethical behavior, is the standards of ethics in that profession. Now, if you just go across the board, there's standards of ethics in the medical practitioner, there's standards of ethics in the accounting profession, there's standards of ethics in the, so that's where we're coming from here, is to get, and that you've seen extensive set of standards that we've developed as a set of standards for the supply chain profession. And I think that's where we're coming from, is not only, and I support totally what Wayne said, it is the obligation by default of anybody to have ethical behavior across the supply chain. But ASCI as a body then sets a set of standards that actually can guide and help people on that. And therefore, when you do register, and all the guys around the table, they are registered, Wayne as well, and when you do register under the scheme, there is a fundamental obligation against obligation to the ethics management program, so that when you go out and you have your nominals against your name and you say, I'm registered, I'm practicing, I'm acknowledged, I'm accredited, then you're at the stage where people can look at you and say, okay, put it very simple terms, I can trust this guy. Because, and Amma is net, and she's back online. Hi, Amma. Amma just right at the end talk about the whistleblowers policy. The whistleblower policy is basically there to say, if anybody, and take my colleagues around the table, if anybody would for some reason behave unethical or that's observed, then somebody can actually put that through whistleblowers policy. And ASCI then has mechanisms in place that, and I think I might mention 4 levels, if I remember correctly, mechanisms in place that would actually can arrange from a warning to right through to membership suspension to cancellation of the registration, and all these gets published on the public register. So we really see the ethics management program as a fundamental component in presenting ASCI registrants and its members in a way that they can stand out almost as the pride of the profession.
Yeah, sorry guys, I had my computer froze on me, so I had to restart. There was a question before I dropped out from Mike Owen. Unfortunately, since I logged back on, I couldn't see the question. If Mike's still online, would you mind repeating your question so I can ask our panelists to answer that question that you had before?
I have Mike's question here. I can just read it, Mike. I'm not sure whether you're online, but Mike says, any idea why there has been no promotion of the professional accreditation scheme over the past 3 to 4 months when people have been more available to make this investment? And I assume available, working from home, having time to actually go through the process. Mike, I think that is a question that we will have to refer to the board, because yeah, I'm fully aware of the fact that the promotions has not really been there for a while. So thank you for your question. I'm glad that you put it on. I'm not sure I am or any of us in the position to answer it, but it's something we can put through to the board to address. So
I'm not sure where you guys got to, so maybe I will start and ask a question. I'll ask this question and any one of you can take it. It says, how would you define ethics, particularly in a supply chain context?
So I think I would like to take that one if I can, Amma. We did just have a brief discussion around what ethics means to us. In terms of a supply chain context, as you would well know, it's very tricky at the moment. Supply chain is difficult, it's busy, and we're all just trying to do our best. I think the ethics within that space is around doing the right thing, committing and doing what you say you're going to do. And you know, people need to remain kind and understanding. And you know, I think ethics can be as much or as little as you believe is needed right now.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. We've got a question that's popped up again from Mike. He says, thanks, Peter. Only one more question. With the ethics training modules, how close is ASCI to having the first ones created and available to members?
Yeah, I think maybe that's a question for your committee members, but I'll answer it. Mike and others, we are finalizing a proposal to the board. The nature of the programs, as I wouldn't say have changed, but as we've worked through with the partner in terms of the way that these modules will be developed, hopefully online interactive, so that it's available 24 hours online to anybody, and even make it then available globally for that matter. So we finalized the model now, and we are just in the process of finalizing a proposal to the board to start with it and basically get it going. And my personal view is that I think since these courses or this training is fundamentally aligned with the 17 goals of the United Nations, as well as the 10 business principles, from United Nations, what do you call that program, Amma? The
United Nations Sustainability Development Goals.
Yeah, the goals, and there's another thing. Sorry, I forgot about it. There's a business set of business principles, which is all built into these programs. And with the ASCI conference coming up, which is a theme around those goals, we are really keen to get these going as soon as we can, so people can do these little training programs and line up with what is coming out in the conference. So as soon as we can get it to the board, Mike.
Right. Thanks, Mike, for the question. The next question I've got, and I'm not sure whether you went through this, is why should you go? Oh, so where should you go if you see red flags within the ethics of a person or organization? I know when I came back, you were talking about the whistleblowers. I don't know if that was the question you were answering.
Yes,
okay.
we were, while you were off, is where should you go? ASCI is a body with a mechanism is in place where you can go and you can basically lodge a complaint. And as we've just gone through in your slides as well, you can lodge a complaint, and the complaint goes very confidential within the committee, handles that, but there's appeals options. So if you were to lodge a complaint against Wayne, for example, Wayne has then the option to appeal, and it becomes a real process, and we have processes in place. So again, that just shows you that the mechanisms that ASCI has put in place are, well, my terms, are serious. It's not just like, something on the wall and there's your code and you do this and you do that. There are mechanisms in place to protect the members, and particularly the registrants. There are mechanisms in place to actually give the people appeals options. And all of this is in the whistleblower policy is developed against the Australian legislative frameworks. So it protects you, not only your right as a member within ASCI, but it's also within your rights simply as an individual in this country. So these things are all aligned together.
Okay, thanks very much for that. The next question I've got is, what does the ASCI Ethics Committee represent? Why has it been set up? Maybe I will ask Wayne to answer that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So the Ethics Committee was established as part of the professionalisation charter of ASCI. So in terms of the move by ASCI to establish a professionalisation movement for the supply chain professionals and register as practitioners. But part of that was to set up an ethics committee and an ethics framework to build into that process, to give legitimacy and structure around that professionalisation body. And I guess and there to support the participants, so practitioners, with things like the whistleblower policy, with training materials, with the ethics management plan, I guess the outputs that the ethics committee is producing is there to support members and professionals, practitioners, but also to give structure around the overall ASCI accreditation program.
Okay, thanks for that, Wayne. Just maybe we will talk a little bit about membership and the practitioners. So someone is called a practitioner if they've gone through the accreditation scheme and have I don't know whether the word pass is the right word, but you've come out the other end and you've had your competency recognized.
Whether you are found to be eligible.
Right. Whether you are found to be eligible, that's the right.
To be eligible.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So when you're found to be eligible, then you get called a practitioner. But if you're just a member who hasn't gone through that process, then you're a member. So that's how we differentiate between practitioners and members. I've got a question for Rebecca. You mentioned as part of your introduction that you are now the president of the College of Procurement. Are you able to share with us a little bit more about that, what it entails so people will know? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Thanks, Amma. Sure, it's very new. It's very exciting as well to be able to represent the College of Procurement. We've got a really exciting and dynamic team that will be working on ensuring that we've got accurate focus areas within the College of Procurement, and that we are able to build a library of resources and a really solid definition, so that people within the organisation can go and tap into those resources and get some top-notch procurement documents or resource or maybe some light bedtime reading.
Cool. Thanks very much, Rebecca.
Can I add, Amma, can I just add to that? Thank you, Rebecca. And I have to say, Rebecca's doing a great job in getting these things going. So yeah, we have 4 colleges, and it is not, you may say, why haven't you heard about that? It's not formally launched because the library that Rebecca is referring to, we're building a little bit more libraries on all 4 colleges. So we're probably going to be ready in another week or maybe 2 weeks. But the college is unique to the supply chain world. It does not exist anywhere. So we are really chuffed with the fact that we have something that brings us to a next level in the professionalization. First of all, the colleges, there's one for every stream: procurement, logistics, ILS, and operations management. And later we will look at the supply chain and technology and stuff as well. First thing. Secondly, the colleges at the moment, and that's in making us ready for the launch, if you will, is going through domain scoping, is the term I use, to get a proper definition. If you look at, and I take the guys at ILS, for example, in the military, they just listed like 25 different definitions that the defense is using, and people are confused and nobody really knows which one is which. So we're working through that in each college, procurement as well, and that will be a formal definition for ASCI. And then with that, focus areas and themes that support those. So we have a definition, say this is what procurement means for ASCI, this is what logistics means for ASCI. And we're going through aligning it a little bit because there are overlaps. And that will take us to the next step where the colleges will help the point that Amma just made on how you get through this process, this eligibility assessment. The colleges will get more and more engaged in reviewing and refining and updating the eligibility requirements, and eventually maybe even help with the assessments. Start looking at career paths and say, well, if you want to be in procurement, what do you do? What is the options? And so it's really not only scoping the area, but helping our members to define career paths, look where they're going, how they're developing into that, building a library to support that, and then also have an advisory role and a bit of a QA on the CPD offerings, because I can go to ASCI and say, well, hang on, I've got a course in procurement of basket weaving, and I'll go to the college. The college say, well, what's in it? Where does it fit? How many CPD points is it? So the whole idea of the college is to put a cornerstone in to solidify the domain or the stream, if you will, in terms of scope, in terms of career opportunities, in terms of a resource base, in terms of support and refinement of the registration processes. So you can see it's actually quite a big thing. It's not just like sitting around the table. It's serious for us to get these things going. And and Rebecca has taken the presidency of the Procurement College, which I'm grateful for. But now we've lost her on the Ethics Committee, so we may need to negotiate a little bit. But yeah, that's what the colleges are about.
Thank you, Peter and Rebecca. the next question I have is, what are the committee's plans and strategies? So, don't know, Wayne, are you able to share, what are the committee's ethics committee, that is, the plans and the strategies?
Yeah, I guess in line with our constitution and to some degree covering what was in the presentation, and that is, to, I guess, continue to develop and administer the ethics management plan. The EMP is I guess, the core guiding document or strategy that we're working towards. And on the back of that is, building up and developing that library of resources for members to use and refer to, both for training and I guess as a point of reference for guidance on how to make decisions or how to set up ethics management programs within their organisations, that kind of thing. But then, and it's come up also the training programs that are being developed and engaging with partners and building an ecosystem of partners to develop training programs or educational programs, and the establishment of the Alliance for Ethical Supply Chains is probably where we start to get some rubber on the road of getting partner organisations to really drive change through the economy.
Okay, thanks very much, Wayne. So the other question I've got is, why is the Global Ethics Day so important? So I'll throw that to everyone on the panel. Why is the day so important?
I'm happy to jump in first, Amma, if that's all right, and just
say all right.
It's a really great opportunity. There's a if you go type in Global Ethics Day 2021, there's some really interesting information on the website. It outlines how it's really an opportunity for individuals and organisations to address some of the more critical issues facing society and really look in things like attacks on democracy, racial injustice, climate change, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic. There's some really interesting questions on there as well, like what does a more ethical world look like to you? What ethical issues matter most to you, and what's the most pressing ethical issue today for you? So it's a really good chance to reflect, I think, and explore further how we can make the world a more ethical place.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. Wayne?
Yeah, I mean, it's a highly topical issue, but in terms of it brings an opportunity to raise awareness and to bring focus on the issues that we just talked about. But that ethical issues are often quite abstract, and the issues in our daily lives that you don't think about when making decisions, whether it be private or professional. And days like today sort of bring that back into focus and make you think through consequences of even small decisions of buying patterns or the way you treat other people, or the way you assume other some of the assumptions that you make that you can sit back and personally start to think and challenge, but then expand that into an organisational context. How does an organisation behave, and what patterns of behaviour and mechanisms are become commonplace in organisations that lead to ethical issues, maybe not visible, but down the supply chain.
Yeah, definitely. Peter, what are your thoughts?
No, I think I totally support what the guys have just said. It is something that is part of our lives, and I just want to refer back to the slides that you had on the principles of professional conduct and these things. When you went through that, I was thinking through that, and I know I've been part of this when we developed it. So you kind of don't think of this from an outside point of view, but when you presented it, I suddenly just realized, you know what? If you really ask somebody, what does it mean to have ethical behavior, then those principles are actually well formulated, even if I have to say that ourselves. It tells you, it's got to do with relationships, and if you do this, got to do with behavior. So those principles of professional conduct and stuff that you had before is really, really where I think ASCI has succeeded in putting a structure or a framework maybe together with guidance and policies and stuff that you can really sit back and say, well, if I say, well, I don't know, what does it mean? It's, I think Wayne just said, it's kind of can be many things to many people. I mean, with respect, that is what we quite often see. So if we go back to what you just presented, there is a framework now that says this, and this is how it works. These are the guidelines. And coming back to the library that you mentioned, we'll be building those things so people can read about these and understand it and have debate on this. And we may actually, going one step further, and I don't want to put words in the committee's mouth, but maybe we go one step further and have some discussion, debate, or blogging or something somewhere where people can actually put discussions on these things and what they come across and share ideas. Yeah. But I just think as a profession and as people, in our first place, as people, we have a responsibility to ourselves and our fellow man to be ethical and to treat people properly and have behavior that is ethical. But then as a profession, ASCI has a role to give sufficient guidance to that. So in the event, which one would hope is not necessary, but in the event somebody says, I don't know what it means, they can go, there are frameworks and standards and stuff that you can follow. And in the event there's something going wrong, we've got the mechanisms in place to help and advise, and we can actually protect. So for me, this thing is just amazingly powerful as I look at it, and give you credit, the way that you've done that. I've looked at this and I said, well, I've never, because we've been so close to this, never stood outside and listened to somebody saying how all this fit together. And I think it's an amazingly well-developed structure to go at. And again, from a supply chain point of view, that's unique in the country, if not in a lot of places around the world, that there is a structure like that for people. So if you go out and you are registered like all you guys are, then it means something. It means something. You've got the RegPrac ops or logistics next to your name, it means something. It means, goodness, I'm subject to a framework, and even if I don't know what it is, I can go back and I've got a committee that can help me.
Thank you all very much. From my perspective, why is ethics, global ethics, I should say, so important? I think that ethics, and I do agree with everything that's been said so far. I think ethics is important. It is part and parcel of life. And people probably don't think about it that way, because every day, every decision that you make, you may not consciously think about it, but there's an ethical component to it, right? And so it's like, am I going to do the right, or am I going to do the wrong thing? And so the fact that we've got this focus on today is really to make us more aware that every single decision we make has an ethical impact, if not to ourselves, to someone else. And when you think about the supply chain, it's so long. And I talked at the start about how it's a global issue and it's very complex and it's so broad. And to your point, Rebecca, there's so many different parts of it. And when you sit back and think, what does it mean to me and what do I consider as important? Different people will pick different things. But it's okay. It's okay for people to sort of focus on different parts of ethics. But the key thing is that we're having the conversation and we're all working towards creating a world that is ethical, because in the long run, everybody will benefit. Our climate will benefit, our people will benefit, the environment will benefit. Everybody wins out in the end when we have an ethical world. So that's why I think the Global Ethics Day is important. We've got a comment from Mike. So we like you, Mike. You put in lots of comments. He said here, sorry, looks like I lied. Wayne mentioned the Ethical Alliance. Is this the initiative to engage appropriate corporates to fund and support the expansion of ethical supply chain practices? So over to you, Wayne.
Yes, it is. So it's a proposal that we're putting forward that creates a consortium of corporate partners to work together and I guess drive change through industry. So yes, that alliance is exactly what you've as you've outlined.
Okay, thank you very, very much. That's really everything that I had on my list to go through today. I don't know, the people on the call, does anyone have any more questions for our esteemed panel to answer? Any thoughts, comments, feedback? Okay, if that's the case, then if it's okay with everyone, we can finish and everyone gets 5 minutes back. So thank you all very much for joining us in our inaugural Global Ethics Day activity. Hopefully this will be the first of many. So looking forward to seeing you all next year to talk about ethics. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
everyone.
Emma.
Thank you, Amma.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye for now. Bye.